Work factors. About 32% less text. The work factor is essentially the number of iterations of the hashing algorithm that are performed for each password. Usually it's actually 2 to the power of work iterations. The purpose of the work factor is to make calculating the hash more computationally expensive, which in turn reduces the speed and or increases the cost for which an attacker can attempt to crack the password hash. The work factor is typically stored in the hash output. When choosing a work factor, a balance needs to be struck between security and performance. Higher work factors will make the hashes more difficult for an attacker to crack, but will also make the process of verifying a login attempt slower. If the work factor is too high, this may degrade the performance of the application and could also be used by an attacker to carry out a denial of service attack by making a large number of login attempts to exhaust the server's CPU. There is no golden rule here for the ideal work factor. It will depend on the performance of the server and the number of users on the application. Determining the optimal work factor will require experimentation on the specific servers used by the application. As a general rule, calculating a hash should take less than 1 second. Upgrading the work factor. One key advantage of having a work factor is that it can be increased over time as hardware becomes more powerful and cheaper. The most common approach to upgrading the work factor is to wait until the user next authenticates and then to rehash their password with a new work factor. This means that different hashes will have different work factors and may result in hashes being never upgraded if the user doesn't log back into the application. Depending on the application, it may be appropriate to remove the old password hashes and require users to reset their passwords next time they need to log in order to avoid storing older and less secure hashes. Work factors. Work factor means number of iterations of a hashing algorithm. Usually it's actually 2 to the power of work. It makes calculating the hash more computationally expensive, so lower speed and or higher cost of trying to crack the hash. It is usually stored in the hash output. When choosing a work factor, you need to balance security and performance. Higher value makes hashes harder to crack, but also makes the user authentication slower. Too high value can degrade application's performance and be used to DOS or denial of service your application with lots of login attempts to exhaust the server's CPU. There is no golden rule here. It depends on your server's performance and user count. Determining the optimal value requires experimentation on the specific server used by the application. In general, calculating a hash should take less than 1 second. Upgrading the work factor. As hardware becomes more powerful and cheaper with time, you can increase your work factor too. It is very common to wait until user authenticates and then rehash their password with new, higher work factor. It means that different hashes are essentially different work factors, and some hashes might never be upgraded if user never logs in again. Sometimes you might have to remove all password hashes and force users to reset their passwords upon next login to avoid storing old and insecure hashes. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.